living fully alive in every way. You're listening to Relationship Prescriptions with Dr. Carol.
Is it possible to rebuild intimacy after hurt, betrayal, and destruction? I'm Dr. Carol. You're listening to Relationship Prescriptions. The answer is yes. It's also difficult. Just heads up, it can be a difficult journey, but restoration is possible. My guests today have experienced that themselves, and they have also devoted years to helping many other couples walk this challenging journey. When there has been something big happen in your marriage, whether that's sexual addiction, say to porn, affairs, or whatever it is, or some other kind of betrayal, even if it's not directly sexual, maybe it's financial or totally broken communication, what does it take to rebuild intimacy? The good thing about couples who invest in this process is that they can experience greater connection and greater satisfaction on the other side, even than they did before. If that sounds a little too good to be true, hang with us. Listen to my guests today tell their story and how they are helping other couples experience that kind of restoration. Joanna and Matthew Raabsmith have done some amazing work in, first of all, their own marriage, and you will hear about that, but also in what the journey to rebuilding intimacy is like. Something that I hear occasionally from either husband or wife is, if we just have sex again, then that'll fix things. Well, you'll hear why that is not true, and what the journey to rebuilding intimacy is like, and why those steps are as important as they are. So, Joanna and Matthew Raabsmith, I have been looking forward to this conversation. Just at the beginning, a huge thank you for your time, for sharing what we're going through today. It's just awesome to have you on the program.
It's so good to be here. We're really excited as well.
We really appreciate it. We love what you're doing, and we're excited to talk about what we've done and what we've been through, and just really how God has blessed us tremendously.
Amen. Amen. We briefly met at the SILS conference a few weeks ago, and I was blessed by what you shared there, been aware of your work a little bit through Dr. Julie Slattery and Authentic Intimacy, and just it's a real honor to have you here to start with, so that people who may not have heard of you up until now can become aware. You guys, publicly say that the journey we're going to talk about today in restoring brokenness in intimacy with couples is something that the two of you have walked. And so I just love to start out by hearing a bit of what that journey was like for you, what brought you to where you are now, and where you're so passionate about helping others in this walk.
Yeah, it's the unintended journey. I don't think it was what we expected, nor to be probably experts or kind of resources in this field. But God has a way of really not abandoning us and really walking through our experiences. And, we had a wonderful start to our relationship. We really connected on some of our deepest values and what we wanted to do. We both had a heart to serve God and to serve marriages. Actually, even early on, we talked about that as a passion, and we really wanted a great relationship. We really felt like there was something special, and we wanted that to get better and better. And so even early on in our relationship, we tried to find resources and books. We read what we could read. We worked through it, and in a lot of ways did what we thought we could find and what we could kind of connect with to improve our relationship. And
you guys were trying to be intentional.
Yes. We knew how.
As much as we knew how, and
which wasn't very much.
And luckily for us, we wanted to get some education, and that education, we went to get our Masters of Divinity. We wanted to be pastors, and that education really connected us with some incredible resources, some really wonderful knowledge that was rooted in Scripture, but it's also, therapeutically and scientifically, been proven as well. And in connection with those resources that we started to see even kind of greater and greater change in our relationship. What we also discovered, though, was that no matter how hard we worked on our relationship, we always kind of found ourselves kind of hitting our head against this wall. We just we would push to get closer, and then we would be kind of repelled apart. And Joanna really struggled to kind of understand, well, what is this? And I think struggled to know, like, what is this keeping us at this kind of distance?
Yeah. And so we finished our MDivs at seminary, and because of what we had gone through, it was actually kind of a marriage course we took at seminary that transformed a lot of our relationship, and it was based in something called restoration therapy. And so we knew, okay, we want me to go back and get my MFT, Masters of Marriage and Family Therapy, and study under Terry Hargrave, who kind of developed restoration therapy. So we would have more skills, tools, trainings to help other couples. So before I started the summer in between the MDiv and the MFT program, I took an intensive called Shame and Guilt. And as a part of that class, a pastor came and shared his journey of going through sex addiction, recovery, now 3 years into sobriety. And he listed his journey, his path, the resources he plugged into. And as he was talking, something in the back of my mind, I think God was saying, like, there's something here, you need to pay attention to this. And I felt something, and I went home that day. I shared with Matthew what what the pastor had shared in the class, and then I just kind of asked him point blank, is this something that you struggle with?
And up until that point, it had always been no, and that had always been a lie. I had really minimized my struggles with pornography and sexual addiction. I'd always said, that's what I used to struggle with. This isn't a part of our life now. And as that addiction really started to take greater and greater hold of my life and to have a greater and greater impact, I just hid more and more. And that day, August 1st, 2013, she asked, and for some reason, the first time I said yes. When I did, it was terrifying because I knew that I had really put our relationship on the chopping block. I knew that my behavior really didn't qualify me to stay with her, and I had not honored the fidelity of our relationship. I had betrayed her significantly. And instead of, running from me, she handed me that sheet of paper and she said, here's what you're going to do. And there was a little bit of, okay, yes. And so we got to work on recovery. And so we started the process. A lot early on was me dealing with my addiction, dealing with really the kind of bondage and the imprisonment that I had been a part of. And then, creating some space for Joanna to deal with the impact of that betrayal, really the kind of rupture in her vision of what our marriage should be and what our marriage was. I think the hardest part for her was realizing, so much of those years, now I really don't know what they are. And so making kind of space for that. And then eventually trying to figure out, well, what the heck do we do about us? We really did love our marriage, but it was hard to believe that we needed to put back what we had had before. That didn't feel like the right thing to do. And we said, okay, if we're gonna do this, we need to figure out what it is we're working towards and how we get there. And so that's really what we did. We kind of devoted ourselves to figuring out, how do we each recover from this? How do we each show up? And how do we rebuild our relationship the right way? And that's really what has launched us into our work, is realizing that this is what couples in that space usually desperately need.
And part of our journey was kind of piecemealing together some resources and realizing what doesn't work, finding what does, because there was quite a bit of resources for Matthew going through the journey, much fewer resources for me, and almost no resources for us as a couple. And so as we found healing, we realized that that is not always the case for couples going through this. And oftentimes because of a lack of good resources about healing relationship that has gone through betrayal. And so we became pretty passionate about trying to put together those resources, trying to reach couples and let them know there is hope for healing, and here's what it can look like.
Yeah.
I love what you guys were saying, that it wasn't you trying to go back and make something that you had in the past, that you were rebuilding something that needed to, you can see between the two of you, you're an us. You have a relationship there that is not just Joanna and Matthew, that God has allowed you to rebuild an us. And the fact that, yes, there's lots for a person who is wrestling with addiction, and there's even some for the spouse, but really focusing on rebuilding the us, perhaps brand new, perhaps for the first time, and focusing on the relationship part. I have talked with a number of people walking through this that really struggled to see what can the us be. That, okay, if I deal with my stuff, that's fine, but my spouse isn't really, in this. And one question that I'd love you guys to speak to first, for the person who discovers that sexual addiction or sexual betrayal is happening in their marriage, and their spouse is not acknowledging it. They're not like you, Matthew, saying, yeah, I'm going to do this. It's there. Talk to that person first, and then we'll talk a bit about the journey forward.
Yeah, that's an incredibly difficult place to be, especially because a lot of times when that happens, you aren't given full honesty even then. And so you only know the small piece. You still don't know the reality of what you're living in. And that's very traumatic for that person going through that. And so, I think when I work with clients who that's their story, that's what they're going through, I work really hard to help empower them in that situation so they're not dependent on their spouse to know their own reality, right? They're not dependent on their spouse for their own security. And so working to figure out, okay, where are you going to find that security, right? It has to be apart from them. It has to be in God. It has to be in yourself. And so working really hard to focus on that self-care, creating healthy boundaries to keep yourself safe in that relationship where you don't know fully what's going on. And the details, the practicals of all of that look so different in each relationship, but those are some really important starting places, understanding your own trauma reactions and how to manage those and how to kind of heal from those. That is possible outside of the relationship, right? And so really focusing a lot on that is, I think, initially some really important steps.
And one of the things I think we always like to mention is that, healthy self and healthy relationships really should never work against each other. And so, for someone who is in a relationship with a partner who is maybe stuck in an addiction or is unwilling to kind of accept responsibility or acknowledge the impact of their actions, I can still take care of what I'm responsible for. And in my relationships, I'm responsible for me, and I'm responsible to care for the relationship. I'm not responsible to care or meet the needs of the other person, but I am responsible to the relationship. And part of that will mean nurturing someone, caring for them by holding them accountable, by being able to say that our relationship deserves two people who accept responsibility for their actions, who take responsibility for where they're at and what they do. And if you will not do that, I will care for our relationship by either kind of setting boundaries or expectations for really speaking for the marriage. And so we encourage partners that you have an opportunity to speak for your marriage. If the other person chooses not to speak for your marriage, chooses to speak for their addiction or to value that, they are communicating, that they are moving out of the relationship, that they are in a lot of ways choosing divorce. And you have the ability to say that, and at the same time to be compassionate, to be as patient as you feel like is reasonable, that it doesn't have to be one or the other. It doesn't have to be adversarial, even as someone is really, really wound up in the pain and in this destruction of addiction.
And understanding your own tendencies to play into it in unhealthy ways, right? And so, I worked with clients where maybe the husband is in that blaming stage, not taking responsibility, saying, okay, if you just would have sex with me more often, right? It can actually be tempting for the partner to take that responsibility on, because then I have more control. Well, if I can fix it by just having more sex, I'm in control. And that feels much better than being out of control and letting him take full responsibility for his actions, right? That can be really scary. So helping people understand those types of dynamics and how you can actually heal and empower yourself by letting go of what is not yours to control and not taking responsibility.
And that is hard. We as humans love to be in control.
Oh, totally.
Yes.
Totally. Yeah. Oh, it feels so good, even when it's really painful.
And what we love to help people realize is that you take control because you feel unsafe. But when you take control of what's not yours and what you're not responsible for, you will actually feel less safe. I talk with partners a lot and say, if you manage his recovery once he's in it, even though that will feel in the moment that you are safer, because you know that he can't manage himself, when you start to think about the balance of that relationship, it will feel less safe. You will start to feel like, whoa, I'm not with a partner. I'm not with someone I can rely. And so really understanding that a lot of these behaviors bring us back to the thing that drove them in the first place, and helping people to kind of know that pattern early on in recovery, early on, and really wherever they are in their relationship, and being incredibly, I think, compassionate with people to understand, like, you are here because of the pain you're in. And we get it, and we get how terrifying these moments are, how daunting this work can feel, and empowering people with, what we love about our faith is it reminds us, that we're not in this battle alone, and that we tell our couples, like, there's someone working on your side that is not just you. And that is really good news, because what you can't accomplish on your own, God will help accomplish in great ways. As Joanna said, we were incredibly lucky, because even though we had to search and piecemeal really good resources and the right steps, I can't tell you how many times God showed up for our marriage, either financially or in terms of space and time and the right resource. The fact that an incredibly courageous pastor was willing to share his story meant that the struggle that I had had for 20 years of my life was now a struggle I didn't have to face alone. That I had the resources, that I had the people in my life now who could walk with me on that journey. That was God. I know it was. I know God had his hands in all of that. And so we love to remind our couples of that, remind our spouses of that, you're not alone in this, even when it feels that way. So.
Really good news. Oh, super good news. There's a dynamic I have seen on occasion where a husband or wife, more often the husband, but it can be either, confesses it's burdened them so long, and they out with it. They say, this is me. And they feel some relief. Now, the spouse, the one who's been hurt, betrayed, whatever appropriate words are there, now they're more burdened. Now they know more than they did before. And the person who is now relieved feels like, oh, now let's work on getting back together. And the person who has been traumatized, no, I'm not ready. It's not safe. Talk a bit about that dynamic.
Yes. Yeah. Very common.
Yeah. And absolutely. Part of our work has been to really help couples understand that when there is a breach, like infidelity, addiction, betrayal, how you go about the process of restoring is as important as restoring. And that so often where we see couples really struggle is in the order in which they really, kind of deal with this issue. And so what we have tried to do is to create a kind of concept and a path that helps them see, yes, we are heading towards something better. Yeah. And how we get there and the steps that we take will help us get to that place. And if we don't, we'll find ourselves really frustrated at all the work we get without the really kind of payoff and the results that we want.
Yes.
That brings me to a big piece of your work that I heard you present and that I just find so encouraging. And we're not going to get into the weeds about every detail of every step, but talk about that pathway to restoring the relationship, restoring intimacy. You call it the intimacy pyramid, and just kind of lay out what that journey looks like in kind of broad strokes.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a framework that we found really helpful using with the couples we work with, and even in just understanding our own path and our own journey, and where it has worked well and where we've gotten stuck. And so we usually will draw out a triangle with 5 different levels in it. And the idea is that as you're rebuilding healthy relationship, you want to start at the bottom with a strong foundation. And that first level is honesty. And so oftentimes that may look like a full disclosure. Sometimes it's a therapeutic full disclosure where you prepare and you do it with therapists. Other times it's like you were describing, where finally the truth just comes out in some way in the relationship. And so we try to minimize trauma in that stage as much as possible, but also understand that that creates a lot of pain, but it's also the only way forward towards a healthy relationship. And I remember when we went through what we went through very early on after full disclosure, as heavy as that was, and that is a very true reality, like you said, okay, he's been living with this reality and processing it, for 20 years. I'm just experiencing it for the first time, right? And so he's thrown off his heavy backpack onto my shoulders. And as heavy as it was, I also realized that now we have a chance. Before we kept getting stuck and I knew like something is wrong, something is going on, but I didn't know what it was. Mm-hmm. So I finally had hope for the first time. And so that's that kind of foundation of honesty, right? Getting everything out in the open so we both know the same information. We both know what we're working with in our relationship. And that lets us then begin to build safety. And I think a lot of times when the addict or betrayer, they want to hop up to, right, that kind of top level where we want to get to intimacy, right, the intimacy pyramid. They want to skip over those middle levels of rebuilding safety, rebuilding trust, being able to start practicing vulnerability. And so it's nice to have a visual to tell the couple, like, we have to slow the process down. We have to build in the right way so you guys don't end up in the same place again.
Yeah. And it's part of recognizing that we're here because of the deficiencies that either one or both of you kind of participated in the relationship. And so, teaching empowerment to a partner to be able to say, hey, I know what is good for our marriage and I can speak to that. And to also to speak with an addict or betrayer and to say, addiction thrives on kind of lack of awareness, being blind to what's really happening and kind of avoiding your reality and also isolating. And so part of the ways that you build safety is by bringing a team around you, not going through this process alone in terms of recovery, and also beginning to become an expert on yourself. Do I know me really well? I thought I knew myself until I realized that I didn't know myself at all. I knew a version of myself that I tried to get other people to see, this mask I wore. It wasn't until I really kind of started diving in. And a lot of that knowing was knowing the things that had happened to me, the pains that I experienced in my life, the fears that had been kind of eating away at my trust in God and my faith over the years that I had really just kind of pushed aside or pretended that weren't there. And so becoming an expert in myself is what helped me to show up safely for my wife, because I knew where my threats were. I knew where the pressure points were so that I got to handle those. And the best part of that was when I was able to do those, that built such a sense of confidence in myself. It wasn't her doing the work for me. I got to feel like, wait, no, I can protect my family.
Yeah.
I can show up as the man I know that God believes I am. And because I can do that, that's what helps me to be safe. That's what allows us to really trust each other and then to work together as a team again.
Yeah. And that confidence and belief in himself is what builds safety for me in the relationship, that I don't have to manage. I don't have to control. I don't have to check in on him and where he's That's something that he is being open and transparent about, and he's demonstrating that he can take that responsibility. And so it's only after a relationship has committed to a pattern like this for some time that you begin to have a sense of stability and safety building back in. And that's when you would then start stepping into trust, right? Where you're starting to risk a little bit more. You're starting to lean in a little bit more to each other. But we always tell partners, we don't expect you to trust him. You shouldn't trust him. That was part of the problem to begin with, right? We want you guys to demonstrate safety to each other, trustworthiness, and then decide to trust. But it's on this kind of solid foundation of honesty and safety. And that's when the really fun couples work starts happening.
That is so great. And thank you, Matthew, for also reminding us that nobody wakes up one morning and says, I'm going to get addicted to porn and harm my future and my marriage and my life and my relationship with God, or whatever your brand is. Right. There's also stuff that happened to you. You mentioned fears and just everything. There's stuff that happened to you and then you responded. Yeah, some of that was sinful, but that whole process, you need to do the work for yourself so that you can become a safe and trustworthy person and eventually become capable of intimacy.
Absolutely. And that's what we love. This idea that intimacy, like I said, is not meeting each other's needs or making each other complete. It's the ability to work on a relationship together as a team. For two people to care for the marriage, that is what drives intimacy. And it's when we've been able to realize in ourselves what I'm really capable of in Christ, what God has done in redeeming and restoring me. That's what sets me free to really lean into this relationship. Well, to lean in it in the way that God leans into a relationship with me. And so that's the fun part of really this work. And what we love is that what we've learned from couples who've made it through betrayal and addiction, we've learned what every couple needs to know about relationships, because this journey, while it is one of rebuilding, it's also a journey that every couple is on. And that's really what has been so fun for us to see is how our story informs not only just couples who are going through betrayal, but of couples who are just getting married for the first time. For couples who've been struggling with other issues that may not be addiction or really kind of these destructive tendencies, may really struggle with communication and partnership. They are still on that same path.
And what's crazy is that couples that go through recovery around betrayal and do the work and find the healing, I used to think, I think early on, it was easy to think, well, yeah, we can have an okay marriage, but it won't be as good as it could have been, right? That's the temptation to believe. And we kind of were like, no, it's not worth it for us then. So if we can't have something at least as good, if not better, we're not going to do this because this is going to be hard work. And so we fought hard, and it's amazing, more and more we hear stories of couples who go through this and report greater levels of satisfaction than a lot of couples who haven't, because they are forced to do the hard work that, like Matthew was saying, pretty much all couples need to do, but they aren't forced to because they don't hit a crisis moment. And so when you're forced to do the work and you choose to, you realize that you can create that relationship that you've been wanting, that one of complete intimacy and trust and connection.
I think we've assumed, but let's just be explicit as we kind of near the last few minutes here. Intimacy and sex related, not the same. Talk about, when we say the intimacy period, what are we pointing toward? What are you encouraging couples to work toward?
Absolutely.
Intimacy is this idea of what the scriptures talk about is one flesh, where two become one, where this idea that I don't lose myself, but I am a part of something bigger, that there is an us. And intimacy will include sexual expression. It will be shown through our ability to be naked and unashamed, as the scriptures say. That is a huge part of intimacy. But intimacy is also this idea of this really outflowing partnership, this thing that, because of our deep level of connection, of safety, of love and security, we not only bless each other, we bless others. That our relationship has this ability to really kind of push out from itself and to really overflow.
Yeah. And when we work with couples in our own relationship, we always ask, how are you nurturing the physical, the spiritual, the emotional health of your relationship? Intimacy is really about your whole person, your whole being known and understood. And so making sure couples know how to do that in all areas. It's amazing how we're not taught anything like this in school. A lot of our families don't talk about it, right? And so it is just learning, like, how do you nurture all the different parts of our relationship? And then, like Matthew said, as you find that connection and that secure attachment, you are then healthy enough to launch into the world and bring your healthiest self to other people, and as you're parenting or with coworkers or leading ministries, different things like that.
Yeah. And what we love is we think this is the biblical model. The New Testament talks about the body of Christ, and in its unity, not its uniformity, but in its ability to be different and unified. This is what carries out the work of God in the world. And we feel like marriage is this continued reflection of this. Marriage is a body that requires it to be cared for, a body with different parts and different functions, but is really designed to do the kind of missional work of God. And so what we get excited about marriage is not just the enjoyment that people get out of it, but really how God uses marriage to bless children, to bless friends, to bless communities, to heal broken parts. What we've loved is that the work we have done together has meant healing in so many different spheres of our life. I now understand forgiveness better than I think I ever could. And so I'm able to practice forgiveness with people that I probably would have struggled to practice forgiveness with because of what our marriage has gone through and done. And that is really God using our journey in ways that I never thought possible or kind of imagined.
The miracle. He does miracles. And is there any greater miracle than what you've just alluded to, what you've just described, that he takes what the enemy meant for harm and turns it to good, where other people are actually blessed through what you've gone through. Wow. For couples or somebody listening, watching, who may feel like they're in the middle of this mess, and it's hard to see that any restoration is possible, just invite them, however, whether it's some of your resources or the journey in general, just end with an invitation to those people who may feel like they're right in the middle of that mess.
Yeah. I think we always like to tell those couples is we get it. We get how scary it is. We sat on that couch. We've cried those tears. We've had all the terrifying thoughts of, is this over? And so I think one of the things we've always tried to do with our work, whether it is to work with someone one-on-one or just to encourage them, is to say, like, we get where you're at and you are not alone. There are people who have been here before and who know the pain you're in and the chaos you're in. And we love to work with couples and individuals. We do that a lot with our private practice. And so we always encourage people to reach out and connect with us and ask us questions. And a lot of times we'll just answer questions. We love to just give people great resources, like the resources that we received. We love to walk with couples through this journey. We do that a lot. And most of all, we really just love them to feel that there is hope, that there is a way forward, and that they will not be abandoned on that journey. God will be with them that whole way.
Absolutely. I think encouraging them, like Matthew said, they're not alone. Fight for the places of safe connection that you need and that you deserve. And I know a lot of people don't have those as they start this journey. And so it is vital to find those. It is vital to figure out, okay, who are safe people? What are healthy resources that we can lean into? Like Matthew said, we work with couples all the time and love connecting people with resources depending on where they're at, what they're needing. But I think that's so important not to try and do it alone. We have a lot of couples who try that, or who have tried resources that don't fit for them and try to make them work, and then come kind of limping into our office now with sometimes even trauma from those resources that were not good fits. And so just being really self-aware and knowing what you need in the process. And if something is not working or not fitting or harming, being able to let go of it.
Thank you both, Matthew and Joanna. It has been a delight. We're going to link to a few of those resources in the show notes to this podcast or underneath this video. So if you're watching or listening, be sure and check those out. Just heaps of blessings to both of you in your own marriage and in the work you do, helping so many other marriages walk this journey to the intimacy that God invites us all to, frankly. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Wonderful
you.
to be here.
Appreciate it.
I loved what Matthew and Joanna had to say about focusing on rebuilding the intimacy and what that journey looks like. I hope you can see with that conversation that simply jumping into having sex again does not solve the intimacy problem. There is a lot of work to do, and it is possible. So, whether you are in a marriage now who has been traumatized by sexual addiction, betrayal, and all that goes along with that, or whether you are not at that level yet, but know that intimacy is not happening and want that, these kinds of ideas and the kind of help that Matthew and Joanna Raabsmith provide it's just so encouraging. Check out their resources, renovatelove.com. We'll make sure that link is in the show notes for this episode as well. renovatelove.com. I have been so blessed, encouraged, and frankly educated by talking with Matthew and Joanna and seeing their resources. And if you need this kind of support in your marriage, I know you will find the same. I also want to tell you that I do coaching individually or for couples. If you're interested in finding out more about that, drcarolministries.com/coaching. I want to thank you for being part of our podcast family. I want you to know I treasure every communication I have from you. So if you've got a comment, a question, or even a suggestion for an upcoming episode, send me a message. Use the contact page on our website, drcarolministries.com/contact. I would love to hear from you. And now, until next time, may God bless you.
Thank you for listening to Relationship Prescriptions with Dr. Carol. Our purpose is to provide trustworthy resources that help you and others live fully alive in every way as God intended. If you would like to help others experience transformation in their lives and relationships, we invite you to partner with us. Text the word GIVE, that's GIVE, to the number 512-980-1620. Or visit our website at drcarolministries.com/donate to make a one-time contribution or monthly gift. Your financial support allows us to expand our message and to help others. Thank you so much, and may God bless you.